Welcome everybody to Todo Bitcoin. Today we have the pleasure to have with us our returning guest, Kurt Wuckert Jr. And for those of you who don't know who he is, he's the Bitcoin historian, miner with the Gorilla Pool, and very, very, very knowledgeable guy about Bitcoin history and in general the intricacies of mining and all around Bitcoin and BSV.
Good to be here.
Welcome.
Yeah, it's a great pleasure having you, Kurt. I'm really excited about this interview. I'm really looking forward to it. And give us a brief intro, and especially mentioning your role as a mining CEO and
Sure.
Your involvement with Teranode.
Absolutely. I like to say I'm the highest ranking human member of Gorilla Pool. We all work for the apes. I am a co-founder. Me and Michael, who goes by Root, started the pool about 4 years ago now. And but that is combining a bunch of efforts that we've been into for going on 13 years now. I started mining in 2013, and he started doing basically Bitcoin cloud related stuff in 2013 as well. And we've known each other probably since 2017 or so, just sort of casually friends in the Bitcoin space. And as soon as stuff started getting spicy in the BSV space, let's say, with Tal and things, like people started complaining about the way that Tal was operating, and rather than complaining about it, I like to tell everybody, don't whine about it, mine about it. And so we decided to combine forces and create Gorilla Pool and basically give some competition. And we started as like the pool by the apes for the apes, and we want people to first of all have fun. I think a lot of people in BSV but also in Bitcoin generically are very corporate, and they want to get close to the people who wear suits for a living. And I've always sort of liked the punk rock ethos of Bitcoin a little more than just the banker nonsense, for lack of a better term. And so we want a Gorilla Pool to be fun, but we also have a serious research and development wing. We have guys that are working on how to scale things, how to create the different layers of the Mandala network. And people will say, hey, you shouldn't run your own node, but if you're trying to build an app there's not any documentation on, okay, well then how do I get blockchain data? And so we invented things like the Jungle Bus tool, which is sort of a piece of middleware that takes from the node network and then allows you to feed data into whatever your application is. And lots of other little things like that. We support the one-sat ordinals ecosystem, the Bitcoin schema ecosystem, and some of these other things that make app development easier. So from a Gorilla Pool standpoint, I would say we're a miner. Yeah, like we have hash power and we host ASICs, and anybody that wants to mine, we can be your partner in that. But we see ourselves as more than that. I think of us as the emergent Web3 ISP. So I want to be thought of the same way that people might think of T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, Comcast. Like we're something like that, where we are serving data out to the world that wants to consume that data and interact using the blockchain as their basic substrate. And nobody's really enabling that. People talk about the metanet, and people talk about doing all these things that Web3 is capable of doing, but almost nobody's actually doing it. And part of the problem is an infrastructure problem. So we're trying to solve those deep infrastructure problems while also just running, what you might think of as a Bitcoin mining operation, which is an essential puzzle piece. But it's all this other stuff that we're enabling is mostly the stuff that I'm more excited about. And that has, led to us contributing to things like Teranode and some of this other stuff. Like we are very much at the cutting edge of what any blockchain is capable of. And we hold world records because of it. It might be because we are irresponsible, but I'm pretty excited and pretty proud of I'm proud of what we've accomplished, and I'm excited about what we're going to accomplish. So that's the short version of what we do at Gorilla Pool.
So you said that the Gorilla Pool currently holds the world record of size of a block.
We have mined the single biggest block. We mined a separate block that also has more transactions than any other block that ever had it, that was ever mined. And then we also hold the record for the block that has the highest number of paid transactions as well. So we have a block that we mined that had over 9 coins worth of fees on top of the coin subsidy. And so what all of that shows is that, Bitcoin can scale and mining can be profitable based entirely on transaction fees. And so, those are the kind of things that really matter. And I think a lot of people, we know that we need to get there, but people aren't sure how to get there. And so we've tried to blaze the trail on that kind of stuff.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I liked a lot what you mentioned, which is new to me. You defined your service like the new ISP, the new internet service provider for the Bitcoin world. That's a very good way of putting it. Are there any other companies doing that the same approach?
The only companies that are doing similar things, there's What's on Chain, which is owned by Tal Mining, which is probably in the middle of a name change right now. I keep seeing them called Teranode Infrastructure Services or Teranode Group or something like that. I don't really know what they're up to, but What's on Chain provides various API endpoints that allow you to get blockchain data and do similar things to Jungle Bus. But it's a lot less sophisticated in a lot of ways, although we do use it for various things when it's appropriate. And then the other company is BitTails. BitTails is based in the Middle East. I want to say they're based in Iran, but if that's the case, they probably don't want people to know that's where they're based. So let's assume they're in let's say they're in Lebanon. And but no, they're great guys, and they offer a really good product as well. Similar concept where they're ingesting blockchain data from nodes, and then they expose APIs to allow people to use that data in a way that is lighter weight, so that an application developer, just like in the internet today, like you don't want to run an ISP in your house just to build a website. You have your internet router, and you do your hosting in the cloud and all of those kind of things. And that kind of tooling helps make that possible. But we're the only company that is we are a mining operation, and we offer service directly from the node that we're mining from. And so there's no middlemen, no extra hops, no extra latency. And so we offer a unique service directly from the source. Like we are the source of blockchain data, and then we make it very simple for people to repurpose it. And you're not going through some kind of other middleman. You're buying it directly from the place that has it. So
very well explained. Yeah, fantastic. Naka, if you can show the PowerPoint presentation that we prepared, just to see the table of contents, so we know the what we're going to cover for both Kurt and our viewers.
Yes, there we are.
So go to the next page, please.
Oops.
Yeah, only one. Don't reveal everything.
There we go.
No, that's page 4.
Okay, sorry.
Go to contents. That's
content.
it.
There
Keep
we
your
go.
finger still. Okay, so
It's a tech show, guys.
so yeah, this was what we prepared basically to have a little script.
Cool.
So introduction, flying marks on that. Thank you very much, Kurt.
Yep.
The main reason for this interview is to talk about Teranode, which is the new, it's got all the attention lately. Then I wanted to ask you a question about Mike Hearn. I love that interview that you had with him some time ago. BRC20, I see it on every tweet now and again. So, but I think nobody knows what it is. I bet you don't know Naka either.
I heard about that. I read about that. Another thing is to understand it.
To basically understand what it is. I wanted to explain also a little bit about IPv6 and the idea of, because I also listened to a little video about how to send transactions peer-to-peer through the internet and without having to use mining, I suppose. So to explain how that would work.
Yep.
And then a little explanation on how is BSB mined now with Teranode. What are the challenges and how easy or how difficult it is?
Sure.
And finally, this is a recent video that I saw from Babbage on the two camps that seem to be socially evolving in BSB, like the doers and the influencers. So I want to end with that, if possible.
Sounds good. Sounds great. Yep.
And the trolls also within VSV we have.
yeah. I was having fun with another, like the koala bear today. So I'm having all my animal avatar talks.
Okay. So we're going to go step by step, and let's jump into Teranode. And this, because I had no idea, I went into Grok and I told Grok to draw me a diagram of what Teranode is. So we can use this and see how accurate Grok got it. I think the top part, it says how the old blockchain node works.
Yep.
And Naka, if you can point with your cursor on the top part. I think in the past you had a single computer where you were the miner, the validator, and the database all in one.
Yep.
I guess that's how Satoshi in the original days it was used, and I don't know if this was until recent. And in theory, below is how it works with Teranode. But guide us through it. See if you make any sense of that, Kurt.
So both versions are quite a bit more complex than what this diagram shows, but it's not a bad start. So your single computer, I like to call it monolithic. Your Bitcoin node would be doing everything. It was the wallet. It was the mining client. It was managing the peer-to-peer network between the other nodes. It's doing validation. It is building blocks. It is verifying signatures. It's doing everything. And that's how every blockchain works. Every single blockchain is using a monolithic node infrastructure today at the base layer. And what Teranode does, and what it was proposed to do, 6 or 7 years ago now, is okay. Why don't we take each one of those things and break it into a modular container? And so this is called containerized computing, and that's not a new concept. This is actually how a lot of the internet works today. So, like Facebook, for example, is not running on one big computer. They're probably running in various different types of databases. I think Facebook actually created the Cassandra style database, which is itself like a modular database chunking system, for lack of a better term. And what you're doing is you're taking the various different compute aspects of the thing. So just signature validation, for example, and saying, okay, let's give just that process all of its own resources, and it can do that independently of everything else. And so if the part of the system that is building blocks doesn't necessarily need to be doing anything other than building that block, it can just have very minimal resources. But signature validation, which is the most resource intense part of what a blockchain node is doing, that's going to require a ton of compute. And so you need to have most of your compute dedicated to that container, that bucket. And then you'd have a different container for peer-to-peer. You have a different container for the UTXO storage, which is your unconfirmed transactions, essentially your mempool management. Mempool is a monolithic node term. It works very, very differently in Teranode, but for lack of a better term, let's call them just the mempool is kind of managed in a totally different container. And you break this up into, I don't remember how many it is. I want to say it's probably 15 different containerized machines that exist in a Teranode. And you can run those in a distributed system. So you can run it in a piece of technology called Kubernetes, which is itself just a way to containerize different compute. Or you can run it in Docker, or you can actually run it in a monolithic system as well. And you're basically using virtual machines for each of those buckets. Virtual machine capability is quite good today. It's less efficient than doing it in Kubernetes or Docker, but it's also easier to do. And so it's a very different paradigm for blockchain, but none of this is actually new technology. All of these things have existed for, some of them for 20 or 25 years, actually, and including the database technologies. The database technologies are not really new either, but nobody's done this in the blockchain space because everybody else has this notion that you want lots of people to be able to run these things on their machine at home, and therefore you don't want to have a particularly scalable system. And so nobody's really been thinking commercially about these things because they want them to be like a home compute project. Teranode is the first project that said completely like, okay, what if our only concern is scalability? And so without engineering for any other thing, we just engineer for scalability. And this is what we came up with. And I mean, we very generically, I had nothing to do with the idea, but what other people have done, like Ethereum, for example, has pushed most of their compute infrastructure off to an outside provider called Infera, that is basically just a large cloud compute operation that is making most of Ethereum work. If Infera went down, Ethereum would basically go down. And then companies like Solana or blockchains like Solana are doing similar things as well. And so everybody else is doing scalability really just by adding more compute to things. But Teranode fundamentally breaks up the different processes and lets individual machines work on those individual processes such that you can allocate resources to whatever needs it the most at a given time, while not spending lots of compute resources on things that are easier to do. And so it's an efficiency thing. And then with that efficiency comes much greater scalability. There's also some architectural changes, but a lot of that starts to get real computer sciencey. And I don't know how deep I want to get into it before people start turning blue.
No, that's more enough. And it's a great way of explaining it. Thank you very much. The summary is you break down into the 15 elements, the 15 containers. One question comes to mind is, I understand the money coming from the mining, from the proof of work, hashing. But let's say if I'm doing the UXTO storage, or I'm doing the signature validation, how do I get paid?
So if you're not mining blocks, there's not a direct way to get paid right now. But I think that's a paradigm thing. In my opinion, the most valuable thing that is going to be on chain is the data itself. Like if you're going to be in the blockchain space, I think about it like guys like Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey, who are the people that turned themselves into billionaires in the last 20 years. In every case, almost every case that I can think of, it is by leveraging other people's data and then repurposing it commercially. And Mark Zuckerberg, who created Facebook, he looked at the situation and said, there's all these disparate networks, and what if we put all of things like Photobucket and Zanga and like all these weird social networks that existed, and kind of put all those features in one place? And everybody, he's famous for the line that people used to live in the country, then they moved to the city. Eventually, I want people to live on Facebook, and when they live on Facebook, now Facebook has all your data, and then they're able to sell that data to advertisers, governments, intelligence agencies, whoever's paying for it. And he turned himself into one of the richest men in the history of the world with that data. Now, in blockchain, there's not been a better way to monetize infrastructure from a blockchain paradigm except for in hashing. So hashing has broken out and become this massive profit center because of the opportunity to mine a subsidy, but it's a subsidy, and subsidies by their nature are not actually contributing back to the value of the network. And so we need to move away from that, but it doesn't work until you get a large network effect. So similar to, Facebook didn't have a lot to monetize when there was only 50,000 people using it, but now that there's, I don't even know how many, 2-3 billion people using the network, you get a very good view of what the economy is doing, what it values, what do they like, what don't they like. You start to be able to come up with a profile very quickly. YouTube actually just sent me a thing today and said, Kurt, would you like to see your 2025 year in review? And, I clicked through it and it said, Kurt, you're somebody that really likes information, and we're willing to bet that you're really good at taking complex information and explaining it simply based on the videos that I watch on YouTube. And I was like, oh, it's
scary. It's scary.
Yeah, it's like, okay, thank you, YouTube. It's good to know that's how you feel about me. But and it's extra scary because I think they're right. And so what I think will happen, and this is the world we're building for, like this is what Gorilla Pool cares about. We want to create a new internet where everybody has the ability to log into and log out of their own data, and where they have the ability to purpose that data so that it benefits them. And that can be done, like you need an identity solution, you need wallets that are capable of doing that. But then you also need the network effect of other people that are using the same system. Just like there's 5 billion people on the internet, we need there to be essentially billions of people on BSV that are using the tools, using the network, and so that the network effect is there. And when that network effect is there, there's lots of little business models for someone like yourself to be, utilizing the data that comes from Teranode. I would recommend that you then create a Jungle Bus subscription, and then you use that Jungle Bus subscription to create the indexes of data that you care about. That can be anything. That can be sports betting data. Maybe it's, just race car stuff. Like a lot of people around the world really care about football or soccer for my American viewers. And say, okay, like maybe we can, figure out a way to monetize something in the space for, sports, or it can be any number of other things. Financial data, it can be social data, like building a complex social graph to understand, human relationships and these kind of things. And all of that can be sold in, for data science or whatever else. One of the major ones that in BSV was the Weather SV project, saying, hey, let's just keep all global weather data on chain, because we might be able to sell that to the UN or to to any university that wants to research climate over time, and we can say, hey, here's the time-stamped data of the planet. And so anything that takes data that would otherwise be unreliable and turn it into something that is attested to through proof of work and has timestamps, that's a huge opportunity. And I would encourage you to think about, what data would be 1,000 times more valuable today if it was properly attested to, and if we could know that it was true rather than just have to guess whether or not it's true.
Okay. Fantastic. Great answer. Naka, can you bring the next slide, please?
Sure. There we are.
Here we go.
Okay, this one is a great interview that you had with Mike Hearn, one of my heroes, and it was a fantastic interview. And Mike Hearn was really candid, answering all the questions. When we met at the London Blockchain Conference, you mentioned that both Mike Hearn and Siggy, they live in Switzerland, and that they met for coffee. I'm just wondering, because there were some rumors that maybe Mike Hearn gave Siggy some pointers on how to run these large databases or get these 15 containers or clusters working together. Were there any tips by him?
I don't know. I can't comment because I genuinely don't know. I did connect them so that they could communicate, and I was told that they connected. I have no idea what they talked about or if they have spoken since. What I do know about Mike is that Mike worked on scaling systems for Google before he got into Bitcoin. And so when Mike saw Bitcoin, he immediately saw what could very obviously be horizontally scaled, meaning that the more compute you throw at it, the more it can just scale up forever if you have the compute power for it. And so he was probably the second person on Earth next to Satoshi Nakamoto that looked at Bitcoin and said, oh, this is very obviously the financial data substrate of the future, and that everything on Earth could be intrinsically connected to Bitcoin. And he had a lot of his own ideas for how to do it and why it should be done. He also on my show mentioned the native, I think it was the 40, I always screw this up. I think it's the 402 error in the internet where there's a payment protocol required.
Yes.
And so he's very keyed into the very deep reasons why Bitcoin is valuable and useful and why it's scalable. And so connecting him to Siggy just seemed like a very obvious thing to do, because Siggy's essentially the Mike Hearn of today. He's the guy that took a lot of the ideas that Mike was playing with 10, 12, even 15 years ago now. And actually, shoot, now that I think about it, Mike quit tinkering with Bitcoin about 10 years ago now. So yeah, almost certainly 15 years ago plus. And ultimately, just connecting them to take old ideas that maybe Mike hadn't jogged his memory on in a while, and then connect them to some of the new ideas that Siggy's working on, that maybe there'd be things where they could solve problems for each other. But I don't know how their meeting went. I don't know if they liked each other or hated each other. Maybe they have coffee every Thursday. I really don't know. But yeah, it was one of my Grail interviews too, because Mike's an absolute hero of mine, and I was really honored to have him on the show.
Yeah, it was great. And if anybody in our show, any viewers have not seen it, I really recommend it.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot for that one. Next one, Naka.
Yes. BRC100.
We see this a lot
Yes.
on tweets, and I always ask Grok. I said, "What is the BRC100 Bitcoin protocol?"
Yep.
And that's what it came up with. It says it's an experimental extendable standard for decentralized computing on the Bitcoin blockchain, built on ordinals. That's what it came up with.
So that is both right and wrong. It is correct in that BRC100 is a BTC fungible token protocol, and that is what it does on BTC ordinals. It is not what it does in BSV. So BRCs in BSV stand for a Bitcoin request for comment, and a request for comment is essentially like, hey, we have an idea and we want people to jump in and try to contribute to developing a solution to an idea, or even just discussing why it should or should not be built. The BRC repo, I believe, was started by Ty from Project Babbage, but it's been adopted largely by the community. The BSVA also contributes to it. I know guys like Degan and Jake Jones and Connor Murray all contribute to it, and they see it as a primary place for coming up with solutions to BSV's quandaries. But what's cool is that the BRC protocol in BSV actually has nothing to do with tokens. I guess it does sort of by extension, but ultimately what BRC100 is it is a standard of communication for wallets. And the way that wallets communicate right now with the network is directly to a node. So you have a company like Rock Wallet, for example, or perhaps Centbee. Since Centbee has been problematic for a lot of people, they're aware, like, hey, what's going on with Centbee? And the problem is that BSV nodes are difficult to keep in sync because they have a lot of data, and when they can't keep up with the chain tip, then all of a sudden your wallet is out of sync, and then it looks like you don't have the coins that you should have, and all these other things. And then when you go to export your keys and say, okay, maybe I don't want to use Centbee anymore, I would like to take my coins off of Centbee and do some other thing. And then it says, okay, well, it's a BIP39 derivation path is 0/0/ this and that, and it gets very convoluted about how do I get my coins out of here. What BRC100 does is it defines a standard for all wallets to use so that you can bounce between wallets very, very easily, and so that wallets all communicate to each other using the same language, because right now you can code up a wallet any way that you want, and maybe you go by a standard, or maybe you roll your own. And because of that, most of the wallets don't interoperate with each other, or they haven't interoperated with each other traditionally. They can still receive transactions in between each other, but they're using different underlying principles to make that happen. And what BRC100 is it basically just defines a very clear standard that if all wallets use it, you'll never lose a wallet again. You're able to restore any wallet into any other wallet, and it allows communications between each other to be a lot more simple because they don't have to do any translation in between. So it's a little bit like saying, hey, what if the whole earth just spoke English? You can speak whatever other language you want at home, but if we all use English for business, then we can all do business together. And that's kind of the idea behind BRC100. It's another one where there's lots of little technical things that also offer lots of other benefits, but again, it gets highly technical and probably not too important for most people to understand.
Would we say that this is a breakthrough for business, for creating new businesses based on BSV wallets?
Yes. So it lets people build a wallet more simply, for one, because if you're going to go by the standard, it allows that standard to then be programmed into something like Claude Code and say, hey, Claude, make me a wallet that is BRC100 compliant and offers these features. And it can just grab from the BRC repo, and then it can build it according to those standards. And then that's very simple. But Gorilla Pool, for example, has been working with the Yours Wallet team. Yours Wallet's a browser extension wallet primarily for one-set ordinal tokens. And we've been updating it to be BRC100 compliant as well, because it just makes it easier to transfer tokens around. It makes it that it's portable. You can move your Yours keys into another wallet very simply if you want to. So commercially, you might want to have a background wallet that people aren't even aware they're using, for example. Mm-hmm. And so if you make that BRC100 compliant, then it's easy for websites to just be using coins between each other without the user even necessarily being aware that there's coins being exchanged. And so it just makes lots of things a lot more easy. And then at a deeper level, it makes it a lot safer because you're not going to lose anything in translation, which means you're not going to lose coins in transit is the real goal.
Fantastic.
That's right.
How many wallets operate now with the BRC100 protocol?
I don't actually know. So yours wallet is near done, but it's not currently available. All the wallets going on, like the MetaNet client, the MetaNet desktop, the BSVA wallet toolbox stuff is all BRC100 compliant. I know Handcash is working on it, so it's probably not currently compliant, but they're working toward it. Mm-hmm. The important thing, it's just like anything else. And when you define a standard, you really want everybody to go toward your standard, or else the standard isn't a standard, right? So, which is typical in like the internet. There's lots of things like that where there were 10 different ways to do a thing. But 20 years ago, everybody agreed like, okay, let's just use this particular stack. And so if you type www or https:// like it's going to get you to the next thing on the internet. Like those are all protocol standards. And BRC100 is just another one of those, like saying, okay, guys, can we just agree if you do it this way, then everybody can communicate? And essentially everybody's agreed that it's a good idea. So I think in the next 2 or 3 months, every wallet will be BRC100 compliant, and it'll just make everything easier for everybody.
That's amazing news, because this is in order to make the BSV ecosystem more interoperable. Basically, it's
correct.
Interoperability what achieves it, which is great news for all the businesses inside BSV. Okay, Moto.
Yep.
What happens if a wallet does not upgrade to the BRC100? Will it still be able to make transactions? Say, for example, Simply
absolutely, yeah. I mean, you can still, you can go use something like Exodus Wallet, for example. Is not a BSV ecosystem wallet, but it's a really good wallet. They'll still be able to do basic transactions. You can send and receive your BSV from there. It's just not going to have the ability to do any of the other special things, but we also don't need it to, right? I'm not trying to log into like some kind of MetaNet universe using my Exodus wallet, so it doesn't really matter. So it's not critical that you do it just for sending simple transactions, but it's much more. It's based on the fact that we want to create a richer environment in BSV, where you're using the chain for all kinds of very novel things. And in order to do those novel things, you need to be BRC100 compliant. So Handcash is a great example of a company that should, because then it'll allow them simpler access into, all these other web interfaces and all these other things.
Yeah, and I assume if you tokenize assets in one wallet, it would be easy to transfer to another.
Correct.
Exactly. Imagine your tokens going from one wallet to another, like from different vendors. Amazing.
And they're all able to understand the various overlay networks, which is another thing that's coming. For example, like if you wanted to just join an overlay network that is full of academic data, for example, if you have a BRC100 compliant wallet that is able to understand the overlay protocol, then it can be used to log into and say, okay, like I'm going to do an on-chain, medical research project here, and I'm just logged right in. It's all very simple. So,
yeah, presumably also exchanges that use a BSV will not need to upgrade to BRC100. They can still
correct. They don't have to.
Great.
But one of the other things that becomes easier to do is to build an on-chain decentralized exchange that we can all connect to as well. So,
that would be great.
Exactly. So it allows lots of new rich ideas when all the wallets are speaking the same language.
Fantastic. So very excited now about BRC100. Next slide, Naka, please.
IPv6.
Okay, this is more tweets that I've been seeing, and I think I saw an interview where they mentioned the idea that I could make a transaction via IP to IP. It doesn't have to be IPv6, but I suppose when IPv6 is enabled worldwide,
Yep.
everybody would have his own IP address. And if, say, Kurt, you had your IP address and I had mine, I could send you Bitcoin from my IP address to your IP address through the internet without even going through miners. Is that assumption, is that statement correct?
It is, but it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with IPv6. IPv6 makes it easier for a couple of reasons. It also makes it like IPv6 is several orders of magnitude more efficient, meaning you can send jumbo-sized transactions. Like I could send a transaction that pays out a trillion different people and is doing all kinds of really rich smart contract stuff and whatever else. And that can be done in a peer-to-peer transaction just because of the nature of two wallets that understand IPv6. But that's not actually necessary for doing what the rest of this is saying here. So in an IP to IP transaction system, basically all you would need is the IP address of your recipient, and you could send them a direct transaction that they receive, and then it's up to them if they want to broadcast to have it mined. But like, you two guys are friends, you trust each other, you trust that you're not going to screw each other. And so if you want to send each other, $1 back and forth, you can bypass the network entirely and simply send an IP to IP transaction. And you've received a valid UTXO, and the recipient can check if it's real, but you also don't absolutely have to. And that's part of the reason, or part of the way that Bitcoin scales. And I think a good analogy for that is, if you are to use your credit card, what your credit card is going to do is it's going to query your bank or your credit line and see that you're creditworthy or that you have the money in an account. And so that in that situation, the swipe or the tap to pay is making an internet query into a database to see if you're allowed to spend that money. But what an IP to IP transaction is, it's much more like having cash, and you just say like, hey, here's $5, and you just hand it to your friend. That's a peer-to-peer transaction versus one that is using the internet and some financial institution. So if you think of the mining network as the network of financial institutions, that's how most people use Bitcoin or any blockchain. They're using it like a third-party payment network. Like they're deciding purposely to use the third-party system instead of doing direct person-to-person commerce. Now, the caveat to that is the wallet also has to be ready to set that up and do that. And right now, I don't think any of the wallets are natively set up to do that, mostly because how many people are going to be in a person-to-person scenario right now and want to make that kind of a payment. And so it's a technology that kind of assumes more adoption than currently exists. But this is actually how Bitcoin was designed fundamentally. So in 2009, Satoshi Nakamoto was sending IP to IP transactions to people. That this is the way that he wanted to interact. And he very much saw sending to a Bitcoin address as like a second-class Bitcoin kind of payment. So he didn't like that as an idea. He very much liked the idea of live payments between people. And so that was how he assumed Bitcoin would be used. Obviously, that's not been the case very much, but it's something essentially that we're trying to resurrect. But it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with IPv6. IPv6 has a lot more to do with like lower level transport layer stuff, and is kind of difficult to do because IPv6 is only partially implemented in the internet itself. So, but it's really cool technology, and ultimately, when this stuff becomes ubiquitous, it's part of how we're going to go from 1 million transactions a second to 1 billion transactions a second is by utilizing both this IP to IP model, but also using IPv6 both at the mining network layer and then also between wallets.
Moto, if I remember well, in the London Blockchain Conference, it was Latif Ladid who said, responded to a question in which the question was, which blockchains are nowadays ready for IPv6 or are IPv6 certified? And his answer was Teranode, not BSV per se. He said Teranode, but of course it is BSV.
Right. Teranode is designed to use it natively. It's not turned on yet, again, because there's a lot of other infrastructure that has to go into it. But over the next couple of years, I think we see IPv6 being the primary way that blocks and transactions are propagated between people and between nodes.
Because it seems to me, now that you've explained it so well, this would be the ideal way to transact. So say I want to send Naka $5. I would do it and say I had a Bitcoin wallet IP enabled and he has his own. So I could basically send him the $5. I suppose the wallet would deduct it from my account in some way.
Correct.
He will get those $5. He could then send those $5 to you, and there could be a payment like if it were cash, but not even registered on the blockchain. Is that correct?
Correct. It would be like the three of us sitting around a table and passing each other a $5 bill.
But eventually, it could be in the end reflected in. It will be
correct.
Reflected in the
just like with the $5. At some point, somebody can put it in their pocket and go deposit it at their bank if they like. Exactly. Much the same as when we're done passing it around, the final recipient can broadcast it to the network to make sure that it's valid and whatever else. But it's not strictly necessary.
Okay, that brings an amazing world of possibilities as I can see it, and also
extreme privacy for one.
Extreme privacy. I mean, so
yeah,
more than Zcash.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yep.
Because it gets registered nowhere except between the parties. But the reason why I mentioned IPv6 is because I foresee with the Internet of Things, like devices, a switch, a light bulb, or a computer having a IPv6 address, and if it had a Bitcoin wallet, it could also receive money for its services.
Yep. No, absolutely.
Automatic payments as well.
Yes. Yeah. No, this is very relevant, especially the multicast features of IPv6 become really relevant in IoT situations. Think automated factories would be a really good one, or big data centers. It could also be super relevant to AI. Data stores in AI are going to be a huge use of scalable blockchain, because right now, it's good data in, good data out, and bad data in, bad data out, and people aren't in a good position to know when they're being lied to by their LLM. But if the data itself is firewalled by a transaction, just say like, hey, I'm willing to pay to make sure that my medical question goes to this medical journal instead of like to Reddit or something for your medical advice. And it makes sense that you should pay for higher quality information to be used in the LLM that you're using. But in order to process all of that, you want to be able to have the ability to have extreme scale, and IPv6 is one of those deep infrastructural upgrades that make sure your scale goes from, again, the bottlenecks of IPv4 and makes it that, like, we're talking about exponential step up in bandwidth by using IPv6, which then enables all kinds of other, incredible opportunities.
Yeah. If you were to put a time frame for me and you to have an IPv6 compatible Bitcoin wallet, and me being able to send you those proverbial $5 we just spoke about peer to peer, how long would you reckon? 3-5 years?
Honestly, somebody's just got to code it up. Like your phone already is physically capable of dealing entirely in IPv6 bands. So if somebody were to code that up and make a mobile wallet, I mean, it could be done in weeks. There's not really a limitation there. But these things have to happen in steps. It's one of those things that's like partially integrated. Like we have IPv6 addresses at Gorilla Pool as well that we're able to use, but the internet is a little bit piecemeal right now, where there are certain places where it is only IPv4. And so it's kind of like driving down a superhighway, and then it goes down to 2 lanes again. And then 50 miles later, now it opens back up to a 6-lane highway. And it's like, well, what if all highways were 6-lane, so there's a little bit of engineering that needs to go into some of this stuff, but phone to phone is actually pretty easy. Somebody just needs to code up the wallet, but I think it's more of a demand thing too. It's like, why am I going to do? How many people exist that want to do, tap to pay between 2 people right now that are physically in the same place? It's a very small number, so it's a little bit of a commercial demand limitation more than anything.
Yeah. Okay. Next one, Naka, please.
Yes.
Yeah. So, what are the challenges now mining Teranode? How easy is it for people to join pools and for the, let's say, I don't know exactly how it works, but let's say the master node distributing work to the ASIC miners.
Well, I'll tell you right now, and this is sort of a world announcement, but Gorilla Pool is on mainnet with Teranode, and we are using our Gorilla Node implementation, which is the node, the pool software, and all the stuff necessary to mine. We currently have one ASIC rig connected to it, so we're trying to get lucky and solo mine a Teranode block if possible. And it could happen. There's not a reason why it can't happen that we're aware of, but we're currently testing it. We've been in development for about, I don't know, 5 or 6 months now. The reason for it is that pool technology has gone almost entirely commercial. It's all closed source. There's no open source pool implementations that are capable of doing things in a Teranode paradigm. So we had to build one. And it is, as far as I'm aware, we're basically 99% done with that. If we mine a block, then I guess we can say we're 100% done. But we are, like, as of about 15 hours ago, we finally have it all online. We're trying to mine a Teranode block on the BSV mainnet right now. And if it is successful and there's no problem and if everything gets paid properly and all of that, we'll start to add more hash power to it. And, so at that point, it really is just a commercial decision when we open up to our public pool to allow anybody to then throw hash power at a Teranode endpoint that's on the network. So this could literally happen in days. Probably not. We're probably going to wait till Q1, wait till January to open it up to allow our pool members. But as soon as it's available, literally anybody in the world with hash power can just point at our open public pool address and mine with Teranode. And we're running all the infrastructure.
That's great news.
It is. Yeah, no, we're very excited about it. As for how expensive it is to run a node, it's actually quite a bit cheaper right now because Teranode is so efficient from a software standpoint that you can run in like a Mac Mini or a laptop what would have required the resources of a pretty powerful, bare metal server system to run an SV node. So right now it's cheaper. The only reason why it gets more expensive is when lots of volume comes in. You're going to need to pay for a lot of compute power for the UTXO store, and then also for very rapid read and write on your database for storing not just the UTXO set, but also the confirmed transactions, and the blockchain grows really quickly. So you need to have a lot of very fast hardware for that. But that's, we're talking about the kind of thing like a persistent million transactions a second is very expensive from a hardware standpoint. But that's also more transactions that are happening on the combined networks of like Visa, MasterCard, and American Express right now. So we don't expect that to be a problem in the very near term. And as for right now, it's actually quite a bit cheaper to run a Teranode from a hardware standpoint and a networking standpoint than it is to run SV nodes. So it's been a big step up in efficiency, and it's very obvious in the amount of resources that we need to consume to run the thing.
So just to recap, you said you've put one ASIC miner to mine Teranode and basically today, or is it only been 15 hours?
Last night. It was literally last night before our head of operations went to bed. He let us know. He's like, hey, because the software is basically done. And he's like, hey guys, I'm going to bed, and I threw my 6-year-old ASIC on it to see if we can solo mine a block while I'm asleep. Right. So it's it could happen at any point. If we were to switch 50 ASICs over to it, we would almost certainly mine a block within a few hours. So we're pretty darn confident that we're capable of it. We're not in a position to lose money on it to wait and see. So because it's quite expensive. If there is a problem and we can't mine a block with it, it's a very expensive way to find that out. So
got it. Yeah. Presumably Tal has already managed to do so, or
they've done it at least once. I don't know if they're currently announcing blocks on their Teranode instance, but they have done it and they are doing it. So as far as I'm aware, they're not having any issues, but their setup is very different than our setup because we completely coded ours from scratch.
Right. How many BSB pools are there right now that you know of, or are there only like 3 or 4 large ones?
There's like 5 or 6. There's Tal. Tal has two pools up right now, so it's Tal SV, and then there's Tal Teranode. Gorilla Pool now, I guess, has 2 pools up, one for SV Node, one for Teranode. There's also Mining Dutch, which is just using SV Node currently. There's Kuv Pool, and there's SA100. And there's another couple of them that come in and out, and we're not really sure who about half of them are. A lot of people like to theorize that it's just Tal with a different name on it or whatever. I have no idea. But it's it's an open public network. If Ant Pool and Foundry wanted to show up this afternoon, they could. So
let's assume that your experiment and this ASIC miner ends up mining the Teranode blocks.
Yep.
In your Gorilla Pool, how many ASIC miners do you have roughly, or how many would you put to work on the Teranode?
Well, I mean, we could change our fleet over immediately. The fleet that we own is a few dozen ASICs. It's not a big fleet, but you also don't need a real big fleet for mining on BSV. And then if we take the whole of what we're hosting for people, and we probably have 100 customers or so, the average customer has 3 ASICs with us. So we're running a little under 500 individual ASIC machines. And if we were to switch the entire fleet over, we'd be mining, 7 to 10 blocks a day using Teranode. So when we get to that point, the cutover will be fast, and it really is just a flip of a switch. We would get it done in an afternoon, and then we'd probably retire our SV node to only doing various listening services and kind of have it up as a fallback, basically an emergency backup. But yeah, so the transition will happen for us in 2026. And we'll be completely Teranode at some point in 2026, probably early 2026, unless there's some catastrophe that we discover.
Let me ask you further questions about the mining and your pool. You mentioned you have around 100 customers, so each one on an average three ASIC miners.
Yep.
Where would these ASIC miners be located in different geographic regions where electricity is cheap?
We have not particularly cheap. Some of the cheapest places in the world, like you could go to a place like Nigeria, or you could be in Paraguay or Brazil. If we wanted to get real spicy, we could be mining in, somewhere in Russia or something. But, power is a lot cheaper there, but you have a lot of, geographical risk, political risk, and whatever else. And we've seen it happen. I've seen people that are, we've got $100 million worth of equipment in Russia, and then the Russian government says, hey, these are our ASICs now, and like, what are you going to do about it? So it's that risk is way too much for us to bear. So we are paying US enterprise level electricity rates, which is about 8.25 cents per kilowatt hour, it's a little bit expensive for mining, but it's a lot cheaper than retail power. We are currently mining in 2 physical locations in North America. One of them is in Iowa, and the other one is in Quebec, Canada. And we're spread out that way, again, for the sake of geopolitical risk. If the US says, hey, mining's illegal, we can pivot immediately to our Canadian location. Or on the flip side, if Canada says, hey, we're getting rid of Bitcoin mining, we can move everything to the US. And so that's a little bit how we're spread out for the sake of that. But both are very reliable. They're both in jurisdictions with very normal people, and we've got professional staff, and everything is very, very reliable, which is our main concern. And especially because we're hosting other people's equipment, and for that reason, we want to be able to have legal jurisdiction that makes sense. You can insure the machines if you want, and all of that. So it's not the cheapest way to do it, but it allows us to sleep at night. Yeah,
actually, 8 cents per hour kilowatt is not that expensive. I think it's half price than retail, roughly.
It's a little better than half. I'm paying I pay about 18 cents a kilowatt hour at my home. Yeah. So it's it's pretty good. It can be profitable if you have an efficient ASIC machine.
Yeah.
But it's it's always it's a rough business. It is not an easy business to make money in. So I don't recommend a lot of retail people mine unless you're comfortable losing all the money that you've invested in it, because
unless you make it through a pool, maybe through a pool like yours.
Even in the pool, it's very competitive, and Bitcoin is designed to essentially push you to break even at all times, because it wants people to be you want to be committed. You don't want people that are just showing it and speculating. Like, the difficulty adjustment could have been designed to make everybody rich very quickly, but Satoshi wanted it to be very balanced, and he didn't want people to be casually and passively making tons of money, because he really wanted committed people to be operating nodes, because it's a commercial interest. Like, we are the people we are Bitcoin, essentially. Without people like us, there would be no network. We are the network. And so Satoshi wanted to make sure that the people that are actually operating things care enough about it to take the risk and to essentially break even. Like, we're not exactly losing money, but we're not getting rich in the short term. And there's two reasons for that. One of them is that he wanted people to want to sit on the coins and wait for them to go up in value, but he also wanted to give us the incentive to make sure that we are pushing people to make more transactions on the network. That's where we're going to make our money in the long term, which is why my company is trying to come up with all kinds of tooling to give to the world so that you guys can build apps and use the network. So that's how it's set up. And again, it's grueling, but we've been fine. Like, we have been profitable over the years, but nobody's getting filthy rich just off of mining. Yes. A lot of the people that look rich in mining have done it typically because of venture capital, or they've raised a bunch of money in a public offering, or they're making money in other ways, because mining itself is not going to make anybody rich in the short term. But like I said, I've been mining since 2013. The Bitcoins that I mined in 2013 are obviously worth a lot more than when they were mined. And so if you can pay your bill in fiat and stack the coins that you mine over time, that it shakes out that you become very profitable, but you have to be committed.
That's what we expect for BSV.
Yes, sir.
Although it's a low margin business, but exactly, this is the commitment, the long-term view. This is the important thing in Satoshi's philosophy.
Precisely.
You mentioned 8 cents a kilowatt. Is this because it's a US thing for enterprise, or because you have a special deal with an energy company?
It's both. So we're in the places that we're mining, we are the largest customer in the county, and so we have negotiated to have the best rates of anybody else because we consume the most. But we also have curtailment agreements and other things too. So sometimes they will pay us to turn power off if the grid has greater demand, and so those kind of things help pad the bottom line and things too. But the power industry is a crazy industry itself, and it's been interesting getting to know it and understand it more intimately, and then being able to say, like, hey guys, I know nobody else is sending you $200 or $200,000 a month in fees, so let's talk about how we can make this a little easier. So it's interesting, to say the least.
You mentioned, and it caught my attention, you mentioned it would be cheaper to mine in places like Nigeria, Paraguay, Russia. Yep. You mentioned Paraguay. For any specific reason?
So Paraguay, right now, there is a special, what do they call it? It's like a special economic zone right on the border between Paraguay and Brazil. There is a massive hydroelectric dam that was built, was subsidized by a joint venture between both countries, rather. And they are offering, it's like 1.5 cents per kilowatt hour. And they are literally mining in the dam's infrastructure. And so there's a couple of companies that are offering a hosting solution there to say, hey, like, ship us your ASICs and you can plug them in here, and you pay us 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour. And so they're making a 100% markup on the power, or a 200% markup on the power rather, and and offering that service. So there is an opportunity there, but I hate the risk. Like, I might risk it for my own machines, but because most of our fleet is customer owned, like, that's the kind of thing I'm just not comfortable asking a customer to do. But by all means, if somebody wants to give it a shot, it's been going pretty smoothly for about 1.5 years. So it becomes more tempting over time, but it's also a little bit sketchy because it's a joint venture that I've heard now has a lot to do with a couple of very powerful families that kind of have a handshake deal, and that it may not even actually be legal. Like the countries might not be aware that the Bitcoin mining is happening, and so it's always like that in places like that where it's really cheap. You're dealing with some kind of weird political risk almost always, and I've seen it go sideways too many times.
Yeah. I've just checked on the internet. The cost per kilowatt is even under a cent, which is amazing. Presumably,
yeah, it's crazy.
What's the break even right now mining BSV in kilowatts per hour?
There's too many factors. Difficulty is highly variable. Also, the efficiency of your machine is highly variable. So we have a lot of people in the fleet that still are, they're running Antminer S19 Pros that are 104 terahash versus like the new ones are running at 270 terahash and they consume less power. So those are very profitable, but the older machines, they wouldn't be profitable unless they were paying 3 cents a kilowatt hour. And so there's a balance across the fleet of profitability. So it's a difficult math calculation, but I can tell you some people are earning money and others are losing money every month, depending on the efficiency of their machine.
Let's say an investor, say we had somebody had $100,000 to invest in the Teranode idea ecosystem, mining or whatever it is. Where would you put it?
Probably application development. What we need more than anything is people paying, paid transactions. We need customers. We need people to be creating volume in the ecosystem. So we have, for example, a bunch of stuff that we're intending to launch in the very near future, like at an application level for consumers to use in interacting directly with Gorilla Pool and apps that we support. So, we're not raising money for them, but if you want to talk offline, we can talk about, maybe a JV or something. But really, that's what we really need. The infrastructure is quite good, and mining is very risky. So unless you personally have like, hey, my uncle owns an oil well or something, it probably doesn't make sense to set up mining if you want to make profit quickly. But it would make a lot more sense to invest in somebody that has a really good business idea. And really invest in the business development of it too. Like hire somebody that's like an onboarding specialist or somebody that can cold call, like who's the best customer for this, and like really start to put data on chain, create transactions. That's what's needed more than anything.
We are running out of time. I think we should move to the next topic. Doers and influencers, the two camps on BSV.
Right, yeah, this is the final one. This was from a video that I've just seen from Charles, I don't know if his name is Charles, but from Babbage.
Ty, yeah.
And he wasn't very specific, but he's talking like there's a camp where they're focusing, like the question is how to get BSV investable, right?
Yep.
And what's keeping it back. Now it's everybody knows what's keeping it back is the legacy of Craig Wright, right?
Sure.
He's been trialed and considered an imposter. So when somebody looks at the spiritual leader of BSV, you invariably come up to that, and you lose all trust on BSV. And I think he's mentioning that there's a camp who still believe on maybe Craig being Satoshi, like I think Katie Cryptos. He's saying like if you take the 7th line of the white paper, you reverse it and mix it with you hash it, you get CW. There's these kind of conspiracy fringe theories, which I actually had a conversation with Naka a few weeks ago. We had actually an argument about this where I said, look, we're not bringing out these videos. We're not going to be flat earthers.
It's not, but but again, you bring it up, steganography. It's not. It's something that is a science, it's a discipline. It's something that people use. So it's not like I wouldn't just simply disregard completely. However, of course, there are other levels of theories, like maybe they go way too far into
Yeah.
into the conspiracies. But Teranode, I mean, like these signatures on the blockchain, yes.
But Naka, what you have to understand is that those kind of distractions is what makes BSV
fine.
sound like a toy, right? And overshadows Teranode completely. So I wanted to ask your view on this, Kurt. What is your take on this?
So I have really mixed feelings about it, actually. And part of me agrees with Ty. Like, I don't think Ty is wrong in saying that we really need to focus on building and professionalism, but I don't think building obviously doesn't solve the problem either. Like, what we really need, and I've been saying this now for 7 years, we need people that know how to close a 7-figure deal with a world-class company. And I don't know that we have those people in BSV. Like, we need people that can, set an appointment with JP Morgan and walk in and explain to them why the JP dollar should be built on BSV, and then walk through like, hey, I will give you a project manager, and we will give you a delivery manager, and we will have a dev team on this. We're going to get you an MVP in 6 weeks, and then we're going to have a test module that goes for 2 quarters. And then by the end of 2026, there will be a functioning JP dollar running on BSV. It's capable of 1 million transactions a second. And JP Morgan doesn't need to use Swift or wires or anything by, Q2 2027, right? Like, that's the kind of deal that needs to be made. And, that's not the kind of thing that Ty is talking about. Now, Ty is a software dev and quite a good one, but the software doesn't solve the problem. I remember a guy named Ari, who used to be very big in the BSV community, saying that BSV was guilty of committing random acts of software. And I think he's absolutely right that, we have an app for everything, but what we don't have is demand for the app that the app is solving for the real economy. And that's also true in a lot of the rest of the blockchain ecosystems, where they're really just, they come up with an idea, and just because there's a lot of people with a lot of money that want to pump an idea, they can just make liquidity show up there, and then they create a bunch of FOMO, and then that brings in a bunch of retail capital, and then they all dump on everybody. But that's not a real economy either. That's actually all very, very fake. And they're not solving any fundamental problems. And they're talking about it. Solana just announced like, we're going to be putting real world assets from some custodian on chain, and, some of these other things, but they're all still just barely stabbing at these things. And none of them are doing real business in a big way on chain. Like, there's big custodians doing like Michael Saylor or what they're doing, like these treasury companies and things. So like in a sense, that's some big business, but they're still not using the technology for anything. They're just using the asset as a token on their books. And so, in my opinion, what really needs to be done is we need to figure out like, where is there a major pain point that can be solved by reducing friction, reducing fees, and speeding up settlement by 10 orders of magnitude. And there's lots of those, but we need somebody to define them. They need to write down a business plan, and then they need to be pitching that business plan to the kind of people that can put the money into developing that business idea. That's how real business gets done. As for the other stuff, I think Ty was specifically addressing the fact that people were arguing about flat Earth politics, which is, fine. I was having the conversation too. Like, I was arguing with a guy who was telling me I look like a fool for being a globe-tard, but it ultimately doesn't matter, right? Like Democrats and Republicans should be able to do some business together, and flat earthers and globe earthers should be able to do business together. Like, it shouldn't really affect whether or not we're capable of creating value in the economy just because we have beliefs that are incompatible about some tangential issue. So I think the problem with it is that, just like any community, if you just are chronically online and then you're stuck having nothing but conversations about that kind of thing. I hear my 1.5-year-old screaming in the background. I hope that's not coming over the microphone super hot, but what you need to do is, have your culture. Your culture can be what the culture is, but the people that are bickering about flat Earth are not the people that are contributing to, getting transactions on chain in a big way anyways. So it's like, just because they like BSV doesn't mean they represent BSV in any serious way. And so, I kind of think that doesn't matter. And the rest of it's just, it's internet chatter. Like, what are you going to do on X all day? If you enjoy being on X all day, like, you're going to talk about what you're going to talk about. And that might be politics, it might be conspiracies, it might be Bitcoin or any other thing. And so I think they're a little bit unrelated, and talking about it doesn't solve the fundamental problem of who's cold calling huge companies with a solution that only BSV can provide them. And I think the answer is still probably almost nobody.
Yeah, no, but I was going a step further than that, right? So let's say we have a great guy who can close the 7-figure deal with JP Morgan, and now I'm going to stand in the shoes of JP Morgan, the intern who's going to do the research on BSV to see if it's worthy or not, and I'm going to come across that behind BSV there's this guy called Craig Wright who is an imposter, right?
Yep.
So it's an immediate no.
Well,
see, I don't know if that's the case. Like, when I think about, like, looking into Ethereum, you're going to look at Vitalik Buterin, and he's like this bizarre, creepy guy. He's been comfortable talking about like pedophilia and abuse porn as not necessarily a problem. These kind of things. It's like, the only reason he's not controversial is that the culture in the blockchain space has decided that he's not controversial. And it's just bonkers to me. So, like, I don't think Craig is any more or less weird than anybody else, and he also is not necessarily the representative for BSV. Like, it can be framed that way for sure. I completely understand why you would frame it that way, but you can just as easily frame it as like, hey, BSV is this place where Gorilla Pool exists and Project Babbage exists, and where you can name any number, something like CertaHash Sentinel node doing, cybersecurity logging on chain. And, you can call out these businesses that are doing very real, very cool things. And it's the exact same thing in every other economy. Like, you can look at the internet itself, which has been the largest economic tool of the last 25 years, and say like, hey, is the internet good or is it bad? Like, there's lots of creeps and crooks and weird crap, and you're being monitored, and the CIA and Mossad are scraping your data and all this other stuff. Or you can look at it and say, well, we've been able to speed up commerce and do all these wonderful things with this internet technology. And it really is about framing. Like, how are you framing the debate? And ultimately, the personality of one crazy Australian guy, I don't think that's a deal breaker, because it's not Craig's network. Craig doesn't control it. And ultimately, it's go ahead.
What do you? I mean, it's difficult asking you the question because you are very involved.
Sure.
But I'm asking the question to our viewers and to the people who are going to see this interview: is wouldn't we be better off if Craig came out one day and said, "Sorry, I'm not Satoshi. I was asked to be Satoshi, and I got too deep into the role." Like,
would be irrelevant.
When he played Tarzan, he thought he was Tarzan at one point. Wouldn't it be good if he just gets out of the way, or if we do a hard fork without him?
Honestly, I think anytime you take the opportunity to try to cancel somebody because they're inconvenient, it shows that all it shows is that somebody else is in control and that they're the authoritarian in the system. And ultimately, it is a decentralized network. Craig is not any more or less involved in it than anybody else on Earth can be. And so I've had this conversation with Roger Ver, actually. I sent him a note, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, and said, Roger, I know you're a billionaire. I know you have a giant mining operation. You have all the infrastructure of Bitcoin.com. You could be the most influential person in BSV overnight if you decided to be the biggest pool, start creating wallet infrastructure, start using Bitcoin.com to promote it the way you want to promote it. Like, it's not controlled by anybody. And Roger's just one guy. It could be, it could be Mark Zuckerberg. It could be Elon Musk. It could be Larry Ellison, or, whatever. It could be anybody on Earth could create a consortium. You could get a bunch of oil tycoons together in Texas and say, guys, if you just pooled your resources, you could be the biggest pool and the biggest app dev shop and this tool is an extremely scalable network connected to an extremely scalable distributed database. And if you want to be a primary influence in it and profit from making it a viable economic tool, you can do it. And that applies to anybody that is capable of coordinating human capital and monetary capital can be the most important person in BSV anytime they want. And the fact that Craig, is just this inconvenient character that's involved or, cares about the technology, it doesn't give him any more power. Like Craig gave an interview many years ago saying that the fixed protocol is designed to make it that nobody is in control of anything. I think he even said, like, not even God can stop BSV or something to that effect. He took it to that extreme to say, that's the point of having the fixed protocol and distribution of power, in that it's about competition. It's whoever is the best at competing becomes the most important person in the system. And if he were to be pressured to go through some kind of humiliation ritual or whatever else, it literally just shows that there's somebody with a leash that is actually in control of him and maybe in control of the system, and then they just become the lightning rod for whatever the criticisms are. But again, I really think that the reason BSV is maligned the way that it is because the people that hijacked Bitcoin 10 years ago now are the people that we're trying to disrupt. And it's the BlackRocks, it's the JP Morgans, it's the New York Life and AXA Insurance and MasterCard and all of these things that I've written about and talked about for years. They want the narrative to be, don't use blockchain for payments. Don't use it for identity. Don't use it for OAuth login. Don't use it for social media. There's a reason COPA included companies like Facebook and Twitter's parent companies. And it's because they look at it and say, man, I make so much money routing people's data into ways that profit me. And if this blockchain takes off, if it really gets traction, all of a sudden, all of us don't have the ability to compete with it. Like, it brings all of them down a notch. And so, and any one of those people at some point, like, they're going to need to relent, because this is not a technology that's going away. They're just trying to hold it back while they create their stake in things. They're trying to figure out the best way to produce a blockchain or make a blockchain work for them too. And I think ultimately, like, BSV is going to humble everybody. And then we're going to be in a world, it's like the internet. I don't have to care about the values or the problematic nature of people like Tim Berners-Lee just because he created the World Wide Web. And I think over time, somebody like Craig is going to be, a page in history books the way that somebody like Thomas Edison is a page in the history books. Thomas Edison ripped off a bunch of people's patents. He stole a bunch of people's IP. He was a very dishonest and unpleasant person, but kids read about him. He's like, hey, he created the phonograph and the light bulb and all these things. Right. And like, isn't that great? And like, I don't care about his personal life. I don't care about all the other things. I care about the light bulbs and the communication technology that came from it. And, all this stuff is very inside baseball. And ultimately, I don't think people really care. It's at the end of the day, it only matters because all blockchains have failed to launch, and we've failed to really disrupt anything. And at some point, we're going to get past the drama and we're really going to get to business. And if we don't, we're all going to fail anyways. And then we're all just going to look like we wasted the last 15 years. And I really hope that's not the case.
Correct. And maybe last question, because we are really running out of time.
Yeah, no problem.
Do you see any signs in the horizon now that, that demand that you say that is not there right now, it's not that is what is BSV is lacking, because we have the infrastructure of the technology right now, especially now with Teranode being launched. Do you see any signs of this changing? Maybe also in consideration of the latest change with the increase of the fees, of the price of the for fees 100 times.
So I think from a demand standpoint, it's an efficiency machine. I can tell you right now that Gorilla Pool is working a lot of leads with a lot of people. We want to help people integrate their existing businesses and speed them up with technology. I think a lot of people tried to create replacements for things. Like, if you think about Twetch, which was a killer product on BSV, but they were trying to go head to head with Twitter, which was I don't even know, 100,000 times bigger company with that much more network effect. And like, it's very obvious in hindsight that that wasn't going to work. What they probably should have done is say, hey, Twitch is a really good Twitter client. And if you use Twitter through Twitch, you can monetize your tweets rather than trying to drag tweets into Twitch as some kind of, you know, other system. So I think they had a really good idea, but the adoption strategy was actually backwards. But right now, you know, I've actually written a lot of articles about this recently. I have one of my articles, I called it MoneyGram, but I spelled it MNEE. So the company MoneyGram is 150 years old. You know, what do you call it? Like cross-border payment system. Yes. And I scale out, like, here's what MoneyGram should do. Like, MoneyGram should be using the money stablecoin token for all of their internal settlement. And then, in fact, they could also have distributed decentralized users. So treat it like an Uber model. So imagine you're somebody that can receive money as part of the system. You as an individual, like if I want to send money to, you know, Barcelona or something, like there's 50 guys around Barcelona that can be that broker, and I can send the money directly to them and they can settle it at a desk. It can even be in their house if they want it to be. And, you know, you can send money from the Philippines or China or whatever into Barcelona. It takes 2 seconds to settle. And then, you know, they can charge a little fee for it, and that's their little business using BSV as this underlying model. And so I wrote out a bunch of these models, and we're also pitching these kind of things to lots of companies like that. And that's just one thing. That's just the cross-border money system. But I got things for, like, here's how we can disrupt VPN technology, and here's how we can disrupt you know, things like distributed compute. You know, could your computer be earning money at night while you're asleep? Like, you could be processing AI data if it was done in a way where the data was secure, and you can use blockchain for that. And so I'm trying to come up with ways that both average people can be purposing BSV to making a little bit of money for themselves, but we're also pitching, you know, big companies and big banks on using these things for, you know, major international or just commercial settlement technology. And then even things like smart factories, IoT. And then the other thing that I really care about is social. We support Bitcoin schema because it allows people to build a social graph that you can then integrate into things like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, et cetera, and use a client model rather than trying to build a TikTok competitor. Like, use TikTok using Bitcoin social stuff and monetize your data in more ways than one. So I don't know what anybody else is doing, but, you know, as for Gorilla Pool, we are, you know, doing our very best to reach clients and build them real solutions and integrate into real business, not try to replace everybody. I don't think I'm going to create a startup that is going to replace Google or Facebook or whatever, but I would love for them to become a customer and ultimately speed up their processes and allow them to do business in a way that is a lot better than they're doing it now. And then we all profit from it. And I think that's the way forward. Well,
ultimately, like people like Larry Fink of BlackRock, he said clearly everything will be tokenized. I mean, I'm thinking how it will be only on BSV, basically. Yeah. How do you do this at that scale?
And that's a good thing. I look at all these people, the people who right now are wrong about blockchain, but they know that things need to be tokenized. They're just going to be my customer someday. And so all of the work they're doing right now is good. If they can do it on Ethereum and fail, they can do it on Solana and fail. And eventually, if the idea really is the way they want to go, they will be my customer eventually.
Great.
Okay. Thank you so much. See you next time.
Sounds good.
Much.
Thanks, guys.
It's been a great interview. I think people will enjoy it. Very informative for everybody.
Thank you.
Great.
Cheers.